Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stigma-Free Society's Facebook Live event. My name is Gerry Friesen, also known as a recovering farmer. I am a stress and conflict management specialist working out of Manitoba. Because of my own journey with mental illness, I have a real passion in talking about it because it is in talking to others we can find a path forward for ourselves. You can learn more about me by visiting gerryfriesen.ca. Through this Facebook Live event, I am representing the Stigma-Free Society, which is a Canadian registered charity that aims to reduce stigma of all kinds with a focus on mental health. This event is part of their Rural Mental Wellness Toolkit, an online community-based mental health program that creates access to mental health education and peer support training, as well as practical and relatable resources for those living in rural and agricultural communities. You can find the toolkit at ruralmentalwellness.com. I'm excited today to have the opportunity to talk to Wendy Bennett. Hi, Wendy.
Good to see you, Gerry.
I love that background I'm seeing there. It feels so summery.
It's I found a beautiful spot with lots of trees and blue sky and hopefully not too many cars.
Right on. Perfect. Wendy Bennett is the executive director of AgSafe Agriculture Association and has been a health and safety professional for more than 25 years. She serves as a director on two boards whose organizations focus on agricultural safety and health nationally and internationally. Wendy believes incorporating physical and psychological safety into daily operations is the key to reducing injuries and illness. Wendy has a degree from Queen's University in psychology and sociology, an EMBA from the University of Fredericton, and recently her advanced certificate in psychological health and safety in the workplace. She loves to share her knowledge and experience with others. She volunteers with Special Olympics and is active in the gym, on the water, and on the slopes. What it doesn't say in here is actually you're based out of British Columbia, right, Wendy?
That is true. That is true. And I always hate those canned bios,
Yeah.
but
Well, you know how it is. I met Wendy a few years ago when I was involved in the know training, and certainly have appreciated her involvement in mental health, particularly as it pertains to agriculture in Canada. So let's talk about British Columbia, I suppose. Can you begin by telling our audience more about AgSafe Agriculture Association?
absolutely. And sorry that I didn't mention that I'm from BC before. But I'm a transplant. I was originally in Ontario, so it's okay.
Okay.
AgSafe is the Health and Safety Association for BC Agriculture. So we offer resources, training, education, and consulting. Hang on, car. Ta-da! For farm employers and workers. So they started in 1993 as a partnership between farm employers, farm workers, WorkSafe BC to try and reduce the injuries and illnesses that are happening on farms.
All right. Now, in the next question, and I guess I learned more about this a few years ago, Wendy. But you have there's a link certainly that BC AgSafe has between physical and mental health. Can you talk more about that link and how that intersection works?
Absolutely. Well, and I'd like to think like the greatest intersection for rural communities here, it's got the lack of available resources, both for physical and for mental health support, though. Within a more urban environment, access to professionals is so much greater, right? It's still a challenge because there's such a lack in Canada. I mean, I'm assuming it's in Canada and BC, there sure is. But the ability for somebody in a rural community to visit a healthcare provider of any kind involves a lot of planning and a lot of time and often a lot of travel. And that's something that people in agriculture, they just don't have that time to spare.
Yeah, no kidding. And because very often, like you say, at travel, and I know certainly in Manitoba here, wanting to travel to see a professional a healthcare provider for an in-person meeting normally involves a significant travel.
Absolutely. And that, that's not always going to be something that's a viable option for them.
Yeah. So why is safety of both these kinds so important in rural and agricultural communities?
It's another car. Sorry. I think physical safety and psychological safety are both important, and that's for all. But recent studies have shown that rural and cultural communities have been identified to be of a greater need than the general population, as I'm sure you're well aware. Farmers and those living outside of urban centers, they have a get it done attitude. So typically they're very adept at finding ways to deal with all the problems that arise. But if physical or psychological safety is less than optimal, the ability to successfully complete these tasks can be implemented, and that can have a huge impact on mental health. It can have a huge impact on physical health, and potentially even, that of people that they work with or live with, and those kind of things.
Yeah. So and again here I'm gonna, for the sake of our audience, kind of make that connection again. When I think normally when we talk about AgSafe, and there's AgSafe organizations in, I believe, most of the provinces, if not all of them, but that other link to mental health, and it seems to me, based on what I've seen, BC seems to have, or your organization, Wendy, seems to have that closer link to the mental health component. And I know, particularly in the biggest event that comes to mind, of course, is that atmospheric river, I believe it's called, that you had a year or two ago. And of course, farming comes with inherent stressors. But can you talk a little bit more about that?
You know what? November 2021 changed lives. And with the atmospheric river, which I don't think that was a phrase before then, but certainly when they floated it around again in November of 2022, a lot of panic ensued. Um, but it really created a lot more angst, a lot more distress, and a lot of extreme challenges for farmers. It identified really clearly to us that one of the things that was missing was the ability for farmers to reach out for mental health support. They went in immediately into response mode and were amazing at that, and the community came together in a huge way. But when the water receded and people started to recognize the devastation, it was really important that we were able to provide some support for farmers and all members of the agricultural community to try and get their lives back together again.
Yeah, and I remember talking to different people about it back then, and I'm certainly not minimizing any parts of agriculture that were facing this challenge, but certainly, from what I was reading and seeing, a lot of the areas that were hit involved livestock operations of some sort, whether it was chickens or turkeys or hogs or dairy. And I always say that having animals in jeopardy like they were adds another whole different layer of stress to what is already stressful.
I think one of the things that we saw that was really clear that anybody that was working with animals there was dairy in particular, two hogs that were sadly wiped out, dairy and poultry farmers who had already experienced and have subsequently experienced amounts of avian influenza, that their first priority wasn't, aside from their immediate family, of course, their first priority was their animals. Their priority was never it was always their family and their animals. The people that work with
Sorry, Wendy, you broke up there. Can you repeat that last sentence?
the concern was always for their family, the people and their animals, but it was never for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's it's very, very, that can be very, very difficult. So, can you tell me kind of what AgSafe BC offers producers in BC regarding mental health? And I believe there's some counseling involved here if people want it. Can you just say a little bit more about that?
happily, oh, I really picked a bad spot. I'm so sorry. We've always AgSafe has a focus. One of our pillars that we work from is providing mental health education and awareness, and just providing the tools and the necessary information for producers to recognize signs of stress in themselves, their workers, their families, and others. But more recently, we have been a recipient of some significant funding that allows us to provide counseling free of charge to anybody in BC agriculture throughout the province. And that's an ongoing project now for the next 3 years. So I am super excited that we're able to provide that. It's with counselors who are agriculturally aware, so they come from an agricultural background already, so they get it, which is such a huge piece to have for this particular type of community.
Oh, without question. And we've all heard, and you and I in particular, I know we were involved in a seminar a year ago or whenever that was, where people talked about some anecdotal stories they had heard regarding when farmers would go to seek help for their mental health and would talk to a professional that had no clue about the intricacies of agriculture. And so it's really important. As you well know, we've certainly focused in on that in Manitoba as well. Here, I knew I had a question. Sometimes a train leaves the station without me on it. So that this counseling you're providing for producers, is that for families? Is that for employees as well?
It is anybody who identifies as part of agriculture.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. That's a very, very wide group of people that you're offering this to then.
We've cast a very wide net. We have youth who are involved, and particularly through after the events of the floods, it was really, really helpful to be able to offer those services.
So we focus in on mental health. We all have mental health. Some of it is better than others. Why is it so important for agricultural producers in particular to be on top of their mental health?
Well, like you said, I mean, it's all of us, and I think it's important for everybody. But I think that positive mental health is a core component of a good day, right? As far as I'm concerned. So somebody struggling with mental health, they may not sleep well. They may not be able to focus on their tasks, and any other number of ways that it can affect them. So lack of focus or lack of sleep can lead to poor decision making. And when you're working in agriculture, that can have a significant impact on how your crop is produced, how your animals survive, or, hopefully that you don't that's going to cause an injury or accident to yourself or somebody else. So I think that having positive mental health for everything that you can control, because there are so many external factors, but that's going to make a huge difference on how everything goes.
Yeah, you're right. And one of the things that has really hit me lately or in the last few years, is how we often talk about that link between mental health and safety, which you just did. We talk about how that affects our day-to-day, operation of equipment or looking after animals or whatever that may be, but also the significant impact it has on decision making. And of course, we all know that farmers have to make a ton of decisions on a daily basis.
Constantly. Anything from if they're applying any type of using any chemicals, or if they're mixing feed, or even just setting up the robotic milking parlor, for example. Any little error in their input, that can have a devastating impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the introduction, when I introduced you, you have some significant degrees in different areas. How did you end up in the agricultural space that you're in?
Well, it's funny because I've been involved in health and safety since I was a kid. Quite honestly, I took the babysitting course as a responsible 12-year-old, and then I put myself through university being a lifeguard and a swimming teacher, and then I got paid, and it just kind of continued that way. So on the safety piece, that's been my life clearly for more than 25 years, because do the math. But I think I got involved in the agriculture community just by a stroke of luck because they contacted me. I was working somewhere else and I was headhunted for a role with Farsha, which then became AgSafe. And within a year, I was very fortunate to be selected to lead the team.
Okay, perfect. So how long have you been leading that team?
10 years now, just over 10 and a half, I
Okay.
guess. And
Yeah.
it's given me such an amazing perspective. I think farmers are some of the most amazing people on this planet. And it's given me a whole lot of respect for where my food comes from and why my space looks nice.
Yeah, that's incredibly important. So we talked a little bit about the atmospheric river you experienced 2 years ago. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what the challenges are that farmers are facing in British Columbia this year?
This year, of course, I mean, it's the same as across Canada. This whole climate change thing is really having a significant impact on farmers' mental health across the country, probably around the world, I would imagine. This year, again, we're dealing with forest fires, as is a lot of Canada. They started a little bit earlier this year than we're accustomed to. So we're dealing with that. BC very recently was had the movement bans lifted for poultry because within a 10-kilometer radius in the lower mainland, there were more chickens. There was more poultry that had to be destroyed than for the rest of the country combined. So a lot of these producers had avian influenza early in 2021. They just recovered from that. They had the flood, lost their flocks from that, and then they got hit with avian influenza again this year. So that's a really, really big one for our poultry producers. And, on that and how much I appreciate where my food comes from, I remember being in Costco in December 2022, and there were no eggs. And somebody said to me, or she just said out loud in the space, she says, "Why are there no eggs?" I said, "Well, all the chickens were wiped out from the flu, from the avian influenza." She goes, "Yeah, but why are there no eggs?"
Yeah.
So,
You know, it's funny, but it's not funny.
yeah, it really is exactly that. So it's like if you wanted a turkey for Christmas, you had to pay top dollar because
Yeah.
so many turkey farms follow their flocks as well.
Yeah.
So, producing every day. Right now, we're doing a research study. There were dairy farms lost silage, which is after they mow the fields, after they cut the fields, they put it away, right, so that it's food for the animals for the rest of the year. And a few years ago, 5 farms they had internal combustion and they lost it all. So there's always that fear for farmers as well. There's so many things that they just feel they don't have control over.
Yeah. And that's the story of everybody's life, whether you're involved in farming or not, right? Those things that are outside of our control are always the biggest stressors because we worry and worry and worry about them, and yet there's absolutely nothing we can do.
Absolutely similar to how I thought I had a quiet road, but there's cars going by.
Yeah, exactly. So, how do you bridge the gap for folks in agricultural communities between focusing on their physical health and mental health?
You know, that's $1 million question, and anybody who can really point to the actual solution is going to be my greatest go-to from now on. But I think one of the things that we do, AgSafe has been around, like I said, we're coming up to our 30-year anniversary, and I have advisors and consultants that are on farm throughout the province. So we're a trusted resource. So, encouraging when we're there to provide information with regards to physical health, my team tries to tie in a little bit of make sure you're taking care of yourself at the same time. Even the slightest little look around you, right? I mean, this is annoying, but this is beautiful. I've got the forest, I've got beautiful blue skies. Anybody who's on a farm has some kind of, or in a rural community, has some kind of spectacular view to appreciate. Just the opportunity to, if you get out of the tractor or you're getting into the tractor, pause for 10 seconds and just take a deep breath and have a stretch. So it's a lot of the proactive. I know you can't take the day off, you have to work 18 hours. I get it. However, can you take 30 seconds for yourself a few times during that span of that day?
Just to take a minute to breathe and to focus. Yeah. So we often talk about stigma involved in particularly mental health in agriculture. Do you see that stigma is reducing?
Yes. But there's two kinds of stigma that we're seeing. So there's internal stigma, and then there's the more common, the external stigma. And a lot of our experience has been when we wanted to put on mental health workshops, for example, farmers said, "Well, I won't come." And when I asked why, well, because everybody knows my truck, and I don't want them to think I have a problem. I think it's important that people who have mental health challenges reach support, but so, right, they've got the external piece where they're recognizing that it's okay to not be okay, but not for me.
Yeah.
And getting past that part is where we're really trying to work hard and provide the proactive, positive, maybe just check in so that you can stay okay.
Yeah, and I was just talking to someone else this morning about the fact that there's been so much work done, the stigma is reducing, and yet you still hear of some of the tragedies out there as a result of farming and not being mentally well.
Yeah, it's very sad. It's very, very sad. There's just, I think, so many farmers, there's just so much on the line. And whether it's real perceived pressure to perform and to be successful and how they measure their success, I think that's part of what needs to change.
Yeah. And we're going to keep doing that.
Yep.
Is there anything else? Sorry, go ahead.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Wendy?
I don't think so. I really appreciate this opportunity. And again, I apologize for the background noises that I tried to hit mute as often as I could.
Yeah, no, that's been working well. You did break up occasionally, but when that happened, I of course asked you to repeat what you were saying. So
Thanks, Gerry. I think
so
I think my biggest message, my biggest takeaway for anybody is thank a farmer. Just thank a farmer, right? Because without farmers, you don't eat.
exactly. Exactly. And without farmers, there won't be eggs in Costco either.
Exactly. Or turkeys for Christmas.
Yeah. It reminded me of years ago when I did an interview with someone and they said, "Well, I don't know why we need hog production because there's always ham and Safeway when I go." Yeah.
Oh dear.
Anyway, we're going to keep spreading the word. We're going to keep working on the mental well-being of our farmers and farm families and those people working in agriculture. I appreciate the work you're doing, Wendy, and wish you well with that.
Thank you, Gerry. I appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us. Your insights into mental health and wellness certainly have resonated with me, as I'm sure they have with our audience. I like the message you gave us at the end, Wendy. I think the message for everybody out there is it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to reach out for help. And I can tell you from personal experience that talking about it is helpful. And so find your supports. They're out there. So please, everybody out there, avail yourselves of the many resources available in the Rural Mental Wellness Toolkit, which can be found at ruralmentalwellness.com. I'm having trouble with my tongue today. It doesn't want to wrap around some of these words. So anyway, thanks again, Wendy. And so till next time, stay safe and be well.
Thank you.